He was worshipped as a god, a son, the eternal leader. But how did one man, Kim Il sung, forge a nation so completely in his own image that his influence endures decades after his death? This is the story of the man who built North Korea. Our story begins not in Pyongyang, but in a small village near it in 1912, born Kim Song-ru. His early life coincided with Japan's brutal occupation of Korea. His family, devout Christians, were part of the anti-Japanese resistance, an experience that would forge his revolutionary identity. By his teenage years, he was in Manchuria, joining the scattered Korean guerrilla groups fighting against the Japanese. It's here that the legend begins. He adopts the name Kim Il sung, meaning become the sun, a name borrowed from a famous deceased guerrilla fighter. This was his first act of crafting his own myth. His guerrilla activities were small scale, but his reputation grew, at least in the eyes of his Soviet patrons. When Japan surrendered in 1945, the Korean peninsula was split. The Soviets, controlling the north, needed a Korean leader to install, someone pliable and with revolutionary credentials. They found their man in the 33-year-old Kim Il sung. He returned to his homeland not as a triumphant conqueror, but as a captain in the Soviet Red Army. Many Koreans didn't even know who he was, but Kim was a master of political maneuvering. With Soviet backing, he swiftly consolidated power, purging rivals and establishing a one-party state under the Korean Workers' Party. He began to build his cult of personality, weaving a narrative where he was the sole liberator of Korea, a peerless military genius. Official histories were rewritten, his minor guerrilla skirmishes magnified into epic victories. His birthplace became a holy site. He was no longer just a political leader, he was becoming the father of the nation. In 1950, with a green light from Stalin, Kim Il sung launched a surprise invasion of South Korea, aiming to reunify the peninsula under his rule. The Korean War had begun. The initial success was stunning, with his forces capturing Seoul in just 3 days. But the tide turned dramatically with the intervention of the United Nations, led by the United States. UN forces pushed the North Koreans back, nearly to the Chinese border. It was only the massive intervention of Chinese volunteers that saved Kim's regime from total collapse. The war ended in 1953 not with a victory, but with a stalemate, an armistice that holds to this day. The peninsula was devastated. Millions were dead, and the division was now permanent, solidified by the demilitarized zone. For Kim, this was a critical moment. He couldn't claim a military victory, so he reframed the narrative. Propaganda declared that North Korea had single-handedly defeated the mighty American imperialists. This victory became a cornerstone of his legitimacy. In the aftermath of the war, Kim purged anyone he suspected of disloyalty, particularly those with ties to the Soviet Union or China. He wanted to be his own master. This led to the creation of his defining ideology, Jukki, or self-reliance. On the surface, it's an idea of national independence, of building Korea with Korean hands. But in practice, Jukki became a tool for absolute control and isolation. It meant that the people should rely only on one person, their great leader, Kim Il sung. All successes were his. All failures were the fault of external enemies or internal saboteurs. Under Jukki, North Korean society was completely reorganized. People were categorized into a rigid class system called Songbun, based on their family's loyalty to the regime. This determined everything: your job, your access to food, where you could live, your entire life's path. Loyalty to Kim Il sung became the only currency that mattered. Society became a vast theater of devotion, with mass games, parades, and mandatory study sessions all centered on the leader's genius. His control extended to the most intimate aspects of life. He was the on-the-spot guidance expert, visiting factories and farms, offering his supposedly brilliant insights on everything from fish farming to textile manufacturing. These visits were pure political theater, designed to portray him as an omniscient, caring father figure, personally guiding every step of the nation's progress. Meanwhile, a vast network of concentration camps, the Kwanliso, was established to imprison anyone, and their entire families for 3 generations who dared to step out of line. As the years went by, the cult of personality reached fanatical levels. Statues of Kim Il-sung, some over 60 feet tall, were erected in every city. His portrait was mandatory in every home. Children were taught in school that they owed everything, including the food they ate and the air they breathed, to the great leader. He was no longer a man, he was a deity. The contrast with the South became stark. While South Korea, with American aid, was transforming into an economic powerhouse, North Korea's state-controlled economy began to stagnate. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 was a devastating blow, cutting off a vital lifeline of support. The economy spiraled into a catastrophic decline. Yet, even as his country began to starve, Kim Il-sung's final act was to secure his dynasty. He chose his son Kim Jong-il as his successor, creating the world's first communist monarchy. The propaganda machine went into overdrive, building a new cult around the dear leader, attributing to him a mythical birth on a sacred mountain, an unparalleled genius. Kim Il-sung died of a heart attack in 1994. The state-controlled media broadcast scenes of hysterical, nationwide grief. His body was embalmed and placed in a glass sarcophagus in the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun, which was converted into his mausoleum. The Constitution was even amended to name him the eternal President of the Republic. In death, as in life, his rule was absolute. His legacy is one of the most complex and tragic of the 20th century. He took a nation scarred by colonialism and war and locked it in a time capsule of his own making. He created a system built on total control, isolation, and a personality cult so pervasive that it has outlived him by decades. Passed down through his son and now to his grandson, understanding Kim Il-sung isn't just about understanding one man. It's about understanding how a nation of millions could be made to worship him, and how that legacy continues to shape one of the most volatile and unpredictable places on Earth. Thank you for watching. If you found this exploration of history interesting, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives into the figures and events that have shaped our world. See you next time.